All right, we're going to call the Finance Committee meeting to order. Present are council members Cost, Floyd, Frazier, Marmie, and Bub. First item on the agenda is a request for appropriation in the amount of $11,820 for computer hardware software.
This request is for the Division of Police JAG grant. It's a reimbursement grant.
Questions?
Motion.
Motion by Bub, second by Floyd. Further questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? The motion passes 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is a request for appropriation for the amount of $70,000, $15,000 professional services, $50,000 contingency, and $5,000 miscellaneous supplies. I will tell you that this was just an error in the budget that was not intended. Actually left these entire accounts out, so it just needs to be corrected.
Motion.
Second.
Motion by Bub, second by Floyd. And this is all for judicial, by the way. So any further questions or discussion?
Does this change the overall budget dollar amount, or?
Yeah, a number of things do. I should have mentioned with the year end and everything, there ended up with $562,000 that ended up coming over for an appropriated balance, and in some odd sense, but this is in addition to that, so it really will add to the expenditures, but this is judicial and it has to be put in there.
Can I
Sure.
This isn't the general fund. This is judicial special revenue.
Right.
So it won't impact the general fund at all.
Oh, okay. But it does impact the budget,
Yeah.
Yes.
It's going to be in the budget. Sure.
in their budget, yeah. Any further questions? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, that motion passes 5-0. Next item on the agenda is a request for appropriation in the amount of $1,499.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, do your paperwork show that it's actually $1,499.90.90?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Originally came out, it didn't have the 90 cents, Doug, and I didn't hear you read the 90 cents. And that's, I think, exactly what happened here. It was a typo when it first came through. So I did get with Autumn on that on Friday to get that corrected. Really, this is just to close out the last approximately $1,500 from the old Newark processing site grant, and just making disappropriation from the transit fund to take care of that, because that grant has already been closed out. There's no dollars available to do that.
Motion. Second.
Motion by Bub, second by Cost. Questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is a request for appropriation in the amount of $800,000.
Thank you. This is our license plate permissive tax funds. We anticipate $800,000 in revenue this year. So I think just a miscommunication between Lori and I. Usually we get this on the regular budget piece of budget legislation, but we didn't this year. So it's coming back and asking for the appropriation into these two accounts then.
Questions?
Make a motion.
Second.
Motion by Bub, second by Floyd. Any additional questions, comments?
This is the same as last year, right?
Same amount as last year, correct.
Okay.
Any further questions? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, that motion passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is a request for appropriation in the amount of $500,000.
Yes, through the hard work of our income tax department, they did collect about 3.5% over budget this last December. As you know, as we kind of wind it up, those last days we collect through 12/31. A lot of that was delinquency, so it isn't necessarily anticipated each year or some repetitive type thing. We, Auditor Johnson and I have talked and think a good place to put it is to replenish our budget stabilization fund that we surely have used to balance the budget the last couple of years. It's also quite early in the year. That's surely not maybe a final destination, but we want to see how income collections are, probably through at least 4 or 5, 6 months of this year and see how it goes, knowing also that 2017 budget is going to be another challenging year as each one is this year, so, this time. So with that, as I say, it isn't maybe a final resting place, and surely there can be discussion with council as we get through the months.
Questions? Pardon?
Motion.
Second. Motion by Floyd, second by Bub. Questions or discussion? I have one. You know, you mentioned that it may not be the final resting place. I guess, you know, with taking so much money out of our capital improvements and not having a whole lot of money going towards street paving, why wouldn't we just leave it in the unappropriated balance if our intent is maybe to utilize it elsewhere?
It's maybe just this council had made note to replenish that fund if there was extra money in the past, and I think that was what the discussion focused on somewhat, or just the challenge of taking money out, and that's surely been a contention the last couple of years that we use that to balance it, so we have unfound monies. That's what we thought we'd put it back to. So it's see if you want to talk to that. I mean, it's tick for tack a little bit.
I think budget stabilization is a good place to put it for safekeeping. We'll see where it is. It can always be transferred later. The unappropriated balance is money that is not on the books, and although we do keep track of it, I just think it would be prudent to put it back in budget stabilization.
Well, it just seems like the budget stabilization has become our new unappropriated balance, and I guess if that's where the intent of it is to be in order for the future, then put money only in there that's going to stay there. And that's where if we have any, if we're thinking about utilizing it for something other than that, we could set it anywhere.
I think the best thing to do is make it so it's a little more difficult to spend it, because we really are facing a crisis in 2017. We were, about $2 million short for 2016, and there's been a lot of attention paid to the 27th pay. Well, that only amounted to about $600,000 of that. So all things as they are, we would still face about $1.5 million deficit for next year. So I think we need at some point start addressing our problems that we're going to be facing next year. Now, if council would want to use the money for capital improvements or street paving or whatever, that's up to you. But I think for right now, the best thing to do is put it someplace where it's on the books.
So is this the amount that's in the budget stabilization fund is $500,000, or is there already a balance in there?
There's a balance of $240,000 roughly that is to be used, to be transferred into the general fund to balance the budget. That was what was planned early on. So this $500,000 is separate, and I think there'll be about another $100,000 coming into budget stabilization from EMS billing. So if nothing happened, we would have $600,000 in there. So one thing you might want to do is consider maybe, we talked to the mayor about this, but using a portion of it for capital improvements or paving or whatever else. But I do think some should be set aside in reserve to address our situation next year. Another thing is, if we do not have cash reserves, it really impacts our bond rating in a negative fashion. So I really wish we could start somehow building up budget stabilization again.
Oh, I agree.
One of the first questions I'm always asked when we sell bonds is, what do you have in reserve? And if you don't have anything, that's not a good mark.
And we'll be dealing with that, probably about the end of June, I assume, for the end of July rolls, I guess,
right,
but on some of that. So it wouldn't be an intention of this administration to use it for anything, to be honest with you, in budget stabilization, and short of emergencies, I guess. Knock on wood, police fire type emergency things, we can't anticipate nor know in many ways, but beyond that it isn't. So
Whether this remains as the inappropriate balance of the general fund or is put in budget stabilization, it requires council action to do something with it anyway. So somebody would have to come before this body with a request.
All right, very good. Any additional questions? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is a request for appropriation amount of $680.99.
This request pertains to funds that were reimbursed by the county that should go back to the Division of Parks.
motion.
Second.
Motion by Bub, second by Floyd. Questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? That motion passes 5-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And the final item on the agenda for finance is a resolution authorizing and directing the mayor of the city of Newark to enter into a housing revolving loan fund administrative agreement with the Ohio Development Services Agency.
This is every 3 years we enter into an agreement with the state to manage our home revolving loan funds, and this resolution pertains to the city's acceptance of that agreement.
And you indicated this needs to be expedited, correct?
Yes, please waive the second reading, please.
Right. To meet a deadline, correct?
Correct.
Make a motion.
Motion by Bob, second by Floyd. Questions or discussion? And Barbara did give me some additional information. I believe we've had, how many, I've got the email.
30 families
Yeah,
since 2006 have benefited from our home revolving loan program.
right. So it's a pretty good program that really is not much of a cost for us as far as administrative costs or anything like that. It's just something we can help, and those that do are worthy and eligible to take advantage of it have up to this point. So, any further questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? That motion passes 5-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And with that, the Finance Committee stands adjourned. Next up is service.
Okay, we'll call the Service Committee meeting to order. Those present are myself, Rath, Floyd, Frazier, Cost, and Bub. First item on the agenda, consider Resolution 16-01, a resolution appropriating the real estate known as parcel number 054-233-580-00.000, Newark, Licking County, located at 225 North 21st Street, Newark, Licking County, Ohio. Authorizing the Director of Law to proceed with a complaint for the appropriation in the Licking County Court of Common Pleas and declaring an emergency. Mr. Moorhead, do you have something to say?
Yes, actually, just a correction on the item on the agenda. The address at this location for Resolution 1601 is at 737 West Church Street, and it shows up correctly on the piece of legislation. But that's the Speedway gas station at the southeast corner of 21st and Church Street. You recall a couple of weeks ago I was before you asked with resolutions of intent to appropriate the property needed for our Safe Routes to School project at this location and at the next one, which is at the Family Video Store across the street. We still have not been able to come to a resolution with the folks at Speedway, so our paperwork is not signed, so we're taking this next step to move forward with the appropriation. As always, we will still try to find a settlement before we get to any sort of court date. I think we actually have had additional contact with them. I think it's just a matter of getting through all the paperwork channels through their corporate office. So, but in any case, we need to move forward with the resolution to appropriate the property to keep the project on schedule for ODOT.
Okay. Any questions from anybody in the committee?
Motion.
Second.
Motion by Floyd, seconded by Bob.
Mr. Rath?
Yes, Ms. Floyd.
I assume this is just a small piece of the property. I see the value's not all that much.
Yes, it's just a little corner out on the, right behind the curb ramp,
Okay.
actually.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions from the committee? Any questions from the audience? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes 5-0. Our second item is, I want to read from the right place so I get the address right. Resolution 16-02, resolution appropriating real estate known as parcel number 054-245358-00.000, Newark, Licking County, located at 225 North 21st Street, Newark, Licking County, Ohio, authorizing the Director of Law to proceed with a complaint for appropriation in the Licking County Court of Common Pleas and declaring an emergency.
Yes, again, same situation. We've had actually more movement with the family video folks as of the very end of last week. We actually talked to one of their managers there. So I think the paperwork is moving through the channels, but again, I don't know that it's going to be signed before next Tuesday night, so would like to go ahead and put this resolution on the agenda. If something comes up between now and the council meeting on Tuesday night, we'll definitely let you know about that, though.
Okay.
Motion.
Motion by Bub, seconded by Cost. Any questions from anybody on the committee? Any questions from the audience? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes 5-0. Sorry, bear with me here. Burned me once. Oh, it's in here. All right. Up next is resolution number 16-03, a final resolution for the conversion of the interchange over State Route 16.
Yes, this is the final resolution or final legislation from ODOT. It's for our Licking State Route 13D project, which is the widening of the bridge on State Route 13 over top of State Route 16, and all the associated traffic work. And we've also added the replacement of the sanitary, the storm sewer, and the water lines through the project area. As with most of these pieces of ODOT legislation, they want it back as soon as possible. They would like to have it back. They're actually counting on it to be back to them on the 20th. So I'm asking for the legislation to be passed at the January 19th council meeting next week. And I believe it has an emergency on it. if I'm
So
not
this one
mistaken.
is, the paperwork says you're requesting it to be expedited, meaning waiving the 2-day reading rule, but not an emergency. Do you need an emergency clause?
I think she put the emergency on the piece of legislation after consulting with the law director.
Okay.
I didn't print the actual legislation out myself, so I don't.
It is.
Yes, okay.
My paperwork is not driving.
Any questions? I'll be glad to try to answer.
I'll make a motion.
Motion from Floyd, seconded by Bob. Any questions from anybody on the committee?
Yeah, I have a question. Brian, I think you told HHCA a while back you thought that we would have a contractor late this month. Is that still correct? Or?
The bids, they found a couple of items that needed corrected on the plans. The bids were supposed to open on the 28th or 29th of this month. I think they're probably pushed back about a month now.
Okay.
So I'm looking for the end of February,
Okay.
beginning of March, by the time they actually open bids on the project.
Mr. Frazier?
What's the impacted area for the stormwater replacement? Is it Hudson, or is it 13, or is it both?
It's both. It's both Mount Vernon Road and Hudson Avenue, south of St. Clair, down to the expressway. Actually, on Hudson, it comes all the way down to Locust Street, and it'll tie into the downtown project that's going on right now. So it'll enable everything on the north side of the expressway to be the combined sewers to be separated in the future. Then.
This is a positive impact.
Oh, absolutely! It'll keep us from tearing up the new pavement we're putting down. So.
Love it when you think ahead.
Jeez.
Any other questions from the committee?
How long is this project slated to last?
About 18 months.
I'm good.
Sure.
I think so.
Okay. Any questions from the audience? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Up next, we have ordinance number 16-01. An ordinance changing the zoning classification of certain real property generally described as 173 and 175 Elmwood Avenue, City of Newark, Licking County, Ohio, from that of single-family residence, RH, High Density District, to MFR, Multifamily Residence District. This will be discussed tonight. Should we pass this and send it out of committee, it'll go to Planning Commission. Planning Commission will review in depth and detail, come back to us with a report. We'll have a public hearing at that time, along with this public hearing. And then at the conclusion of the public hearing, we'll vote on this.
Motion.
So we have a motion by Bub,
Second.
seconded by Floyd. Is there anybody here to speak on this issue tonight?
Yeah, my name's Barry Cost.
Please come to the podium, state your name and your address, please.
My name's Barry Cost. I live at 3436 Johnstown, Utica Road. And we've been in the rental business for like 17 years, and we've noticed a demand in town for, with the homeless situation and stuff that's going on for boarding houses. So we're wanting to switch it into a boarding house. Currently, we would be legal to put 3 to 4 residents in it, and we're wanting to put 5 in each unit. So regardless, it's going to be one, anyhow. We just want to be in compliant with the city of Newark as well. And we're wanting to do 3 or 4 of these homes, which is going to create employment in the community, because we're going to hire somebody to manage the properties full time, as well as a cleaning lady too. So,
Okay.
If I may. Is this a transition house? Is that?
yeah, it's currently already has 2 addresses on it, so it's already a duplex, property.
For the residents that you're going to have stay there, are they transitioning? Or?
No, it's no transitions. We're just going to be open. Yeah, no certain people or anything. We're nonviolent offenders, and we have certain criteria that we're going to go by and guidelines.
Any other questions from committee members? Mr. Cost?
Yeah.
As it stands right now, this is a single-family residential area. Are there other?
There's other ones in the area on Elmwood.
Other ones what?
Other boarding houses that are legally operating in the city of Newark, already on Elmwood. As far as Joe Paul with the code enforcement, I think he told me there's 3.
But currently, it's zoned as you said, a duplex.
It is a duplex, yes.
Okay, but this says single-family.
Well, even if you have a duplex, I believe it's still single family. It's still like, one side of it would be a single family, and the other side.
It's legal
Hold on a second.
I'm sorry. I got lost in that one, or two people at once.
Go ahead, you may know more about it.
You want to direct the committee or me?
I'm just.
Go ahead, Brian, you were going to clarify that?
It's a legal non-conforming structure because it was a duplex before the zoning code changed. So, you know, it's basically grandfathered in as a duplex, although the whole surrounding neighborhood is single-family residential. We have that all over the place, actually.
Okay. Go ahead.
Brian, so there are other duplexes and other boarding houses in that area? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the committee? Any other questions from the audience? Is there anybody else in the audience to speak on this issue? No? Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Appreciate your time. See no other questions or comments? All those in favor of passing this on to the Planning Commission, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? We'll go forward with a vote of 5-0. And that concludes the Service Committee meeting. Up next will be Economic Development.
Okay, we'll call this meeting of the Economic Development Committee to order. Members present are Mr. Johnson, Mr. Frazier, Mr. Rath, Mr. Cost, and myself. We have one piece of legislation to consider tonight, and it's to consider resolution number 16-4 in support of the application for an Ohio Historic Preservation Tax Credit Award filed by RRRL LLC for the rehabilitation of certain properties on the Courthouse Square in downtown Newark, Ohio. And Director Motter is at the podium.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, the owners of 14, 16, and 20 North Park Place wish to do some rehab on those buildings, and they can use these expenses toward applying for up to 25% preservation tax credits. And the application process to get those tax credits requires a resolution from City Council in order for the Ohio Development Agency to consider this project eligible. So, I would highly recommend that we give this serious consideration.
Thank you, Director Motter. What are some other examples of where we've done this before?
Liz Argyle's Loft Apartments is a very good example that I can think of. Tom Atha's purchase of the Union Square building, the old Crystal Ballroom, is another good example. Steve Lehman applied for these tax credits when he purchased the West Main Street, the old Newark High School. Unfortunately, it's become more and more competitive every year, the longer these tax credits are available, and was not successful. But that would be another example where someone has applied.
Thank you, Director Moore.
Motion.
Questions? Motion by Mr. Rath.
Second.
Second, Mr. Frazier. Any questions, comments from the committee? Mr. Rath.
Mark, how is this property being currently used? Second floor.
I believe it's been unoccupied for a long, long time, Jeff. I think it's pretty dilapidated.
And they're going to do what with it now?
I believe they're going to rehab it into rental property. Apartments above there. Residential, yes.
Is there any
Mr. Frazier.
Is there any opportunity lost for other people applying for these tax credits, or so let's say some other property owner wants to apply for the historical tax credit because this person applied, they don't get that opportunity, or is it open to everybody that qualifies?
Mark, you mean specifically to Newark?
Yes.
Another applicant? Yeah, it's open. It's an open application process. I believe there's a scoring process, but for it to even get into the hopper, you need to have a council resolution to move this forward.
Mr. Frazier.
When do they determine funding, or when do they allocate the funds?
I believe this next round is February 16th application deadline, with an awards, I believe, in June. You have an application.
Mark, I can add that. They
Yes.
do it twice a year. March 31, but you gotta kind of make sure you, it's a lot of work to it. March 31, the end of September, and then you got about probably 3 months. Mark was right, probably about June and December is when you find the awards notification.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments from the committee? Questions, comments? Mrs. Floyd.
Mark, what business is this over on the north side of the square?
Sure, it's over top of the HL Art business and also Matilda's Antiques.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, comments from the audience? Seeing none, all those in favor of moving this on to full council, signify by saying aye. Aye. Pose same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you, Director Muller.
Thank you.
That concludes the business economic development. We are adjourned.